So, how does an empire that once ruled a quarter of the entire planet just let it all go? Or maybe a better question is, how does it let it go without actually losing all of its power? Today, we are diving into one of history's greatest reinventions, the incredible story of how the British Empire became the modern Commonwealth.
And that really is the central question for us today, isn't it? How do you transform that kind of massive direct power without it just vanishing into thin air? It's this fascinating puzzle of politics, of history, and of, well, some very clever reinvention.
All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the absolute peak of the empire. Then we'll get into the great transition that followed. After that, we'll explore what this Commonwealth of Nations actually is. And finally, we'll see how it all adds up to influence in the world today. Let's get into it. To really get what changed, you first have to understand the starting point. I mean, the sheer mind-boggling scale of the British Empire when it was at its height. At its peak, the empire controlled nearly a quarter of the world's land and ruled over almost a quarter of its people. Just let that sink in for a second. The phrase, "the sun never sets" on the British Empire wasn't just a saying, it was literally true. And you know, this power wasn't subtle, not at all. It was direct, it was top-down. We're talking colonial governors, administrators, and a military presence that made it very, very clear who was in charge. Influence wasn't something you negotiated, it was something you imposed. But of course, no empire lasts forever. The 20th century just unleashed these powerful forces: nationalism, the absolute devastation of 2 world wars, and the whole imperial system really started to come apart at the seams. Now, this whole transition, it wasn't a single event. It was this deliberate step-by-step process that took decades. It started with ideas, right, like in 1926, talking about autonomous communities. Then came the laws, like the Statute of Westminster. But the real game changer was 1947, the independence of India and Pakistan. That just hit the accelerator on the whole process and really paved the way for something totally new. And this is where it all becomes official. That quote from 1949, the language here is everything. It signals this massive shift. It's no longer about a ruler and their subjects. Now it's a free association of equals. This was pretty much the birth certificate of the modern Commonwealth. Okay, so what about today? How does this organization, which was born from the ashes of an empire, actually work in the 21st century? What is the Commonwealth of Nations? Well, at its core, it's a voluntary political club. And yeah, its roots are in a shared, and let's be honest, often very difficult history with the British Empire, but its focus today is meant to be on a shared future, on cooperation and on common goals. And just look at the map. It is a truly global network. I mean, with a huge presence in Africa, the Americas, Asia, and the Pacific, its diversity is really its defining feature. It's one of the most varied international groups on the planet. So, what's the glue holding this incredibly diverse group together? Well, in theory, it's this set of core values. Things like democracy, human rights, the rule of law. These principles are supposed to be the connective tissue with the shared ideals that bind these 56 very different nations together. So, all of this brings us right back to our main question. How does this history, this modern network, translate into actual political influence for Britain today? Well, the key to understanding it is this shift from what we call hard power to soft power. This slide really lays it out perfectly. The old imperial hard power was coercive. It was about military force, direct rule, telling people what to do. The soft power of the Commonwealth is all about persuasion. It relies on diplomacy, cultural ties, and getting people to want to cooperate. It's basically the difference between a command and a conversation. Of course, the Commonwealth isn't Britain's only tool for influence, not by a long shot. It's really one of 3 key pillars, right alongside its permanent seat on the UN Security Council and its membership in the G7. You put those 3 together and you get Britain's unique footprint on the world stage. So, in the real world, how does this work? Well, influence is used to build diplomatic alliances on big global issues like climate change. The network is used to promote trade and investment between members. And it's used as a platform to champion those shared values we talked about. So, if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this. Britain's global role went through this massive transformation, right? It evolved from the direct, coercive control of a colonial ruler to the indirect, persuasive leadership of a partner inside a completely voluntary global network.
And that leaves us with one final really big question. In a world where power is shifting all the time, a world defined by totally new challenges, can a network that's built on a shared and often painful path